Hello, welcome back to the CSC 2274 videos. Before I go into chapter 13 of the textbook, I thought I'd just show everyone a really nice implementation of the individual assignment for the to-do list. And here's the starting page, and I can say do my videos as a task, and I add it, and my name is Peter K, and then I get to maybe select a due date. Maybe I want to get it done by tomorrow. Okay, and then when I decide I'm done, I can just click that, and the nice thing is that color changes from the green to the grey, and the crossed out text, which is kind of nice, and I then can delete it completely, and that all works and looks pretty good. I had one minor quibble with this one, but I thought it looked really good, it worked really well, and I thought everybody should have a look at it to see how you're going with your to-do lists. Okay, so let's go talk about JavaScript libraries. Just like any language, sometimes people put together functions, groups of functions that work nicely for them, and release those as libraries because other people might find them useful. And JavaScript is no exception. There are many JavaScript libraries. I'm going to talk, well, this chapter talks briefly about two of them, Lodash and jQuery. Perhaps the most popular of those is jQuery, although I haven't looked at the percentages of usage. So let's have a look. Right, so the way you include a library is you just pull in the JavaScript file using a script tag in the HTML. You have to be careful about the ordering, because scripts are executed in the order in which they appear in the DOM, in the domain object model, the document object model. Right, so you've got to make sure, for example, that if we have our alpha.js containing an assignment to the message variable and our beta.js printing it out, then we need this order, alpha first, then beta. If we did beta first, then alpha, then message would not be defined. Sometimes you don't want to take a copy of the library. You might want to go away and pull out the standard place for the library. And that's what's happening here, right? Instead of referencing a local file, which is the stuff that I've written, I go off to a URL and see that one, and that is the Lodash library. You will notice it's completely unintelligible, right? And the reason is because of that min there. What's happened is the developers of Lodash developed Lodash just like you would, with nice variable names and nice spacing, easily readable code. And then they decided to use what's called a minifier. A minifier tries to reduce the size of the file so that because we're downloading these libraries all the time, you don't want to use up too much bandwidth just downloading the libraries, so you reduce the size of the file. And there could be a number of ways to do that. The main things the minifier does is it removes all white space, all unnecessary white space. Right? You can see there are white spaces, but none of them are unnecessary. The other thing it does is it changes sensible human readable variable names to single letter variables, so that the code isn't as anywhere near as readable, right? It's called minimized. I would call it minified. Usually, the way JavaScript libraries are used or are made available in your code is through a single point of contact global variable. That Lodash library that I just pulled down and showed on the screen uses the Lodash, right, as the way of accessing the library, right, an underscore. And so when you want to use one of the functions made available by Lodash, you just go underscore dot and then function name. Here we're trying to find the unique values in an array, the array being 343. Obviously 4 is unique, 3 is not, so we're just going to remove one of the instances of 3 to find the unique elements. And there's lots of useful functions. Let's just go and have a look at the documentation. Right, there's lots and lots of them. So I'm not going to go through all of those, but there is documentation available. It's at lodash.com/docs. So have a look at that. Here are a few. Random, to generate a random number. Range, to give an array of numbers within a range. Includes, to see if there is a particular value within an array. Pick, to select, so produce a new object that only has particular properties of another object. And merge, which allows two objects to be merged into a single new object. So if you're going to use a library or a framework, you should figure out what happens. Now, if you're using Visual Studio Code, it will automatically download type definitions if you use a library, provided you tell it about that dependency in the package.json file. Right, so that's good, and that's a nice thing about Visual Studio Code. There are tools which I haven't talked about, and I may do another video about these, called linters. So lint is just fluff that you find on your laundry, and what a software linter does is it detects software fluffs, and that allows you to check your coding style and make sure you're doing all the right things with your code, or at least many of the right things. The coding styles that I've asked you to put together for your teams could set up a linter to check your coding style as part of a GitHub action. And I may start putting linters on your GitHub team repositories. So mentioned two JavaScript libraries before, Lodash and jQuery. Here's some stuff about jQuery, which is probably the most popular, certainly the one I've used the most. And as it says, it's used in around 70% of the most popular websites. It was developed to fill in gaps in JavaScript and so that you could standardize some functionality across browsers. In particular, it's about manipulating the document object model, the DOM. Right, so it's pretty good. A way to pull it down is using the minified version, right? And let's just open that up and have a look at it. Right, and again it's minified, it's got the brief information in a comment, and then everything else is just minified and completely unreadable. What we may be able to do is to remove that .min and see. There we go, right? So this is the same code, and you can see it's much more human readable. It's a lot longer, right? A lot longer. But you can see it's commented, it's nicely tabbed and formatted, but it's a lot bigger, right? You can see how long that is compared with the minified version, which I can scroll through with 2 flicks on my mouse. Right? So have a look at that. Now, jQuery, the jQuery variable, is actually a function that you can use as a selector function, much like a CSS selector. So, for example, if you want to pick out a particular part of the DOM with an ID of foo, you just refer to it the way you would refer to a CSS selector for the ID foo. So hashtag foo. If you want to select all of the tags, all of the elements of a particular type, you just give that tag into jQuery. Now, programmers apparently don't like typing, so instead of typing out jQuery all the time, the way jQuery usually is referenced is as a simple $sign, right? And so dollar open parenthesis, close parenthesis has exactly the same effect. So this jQuery foo in $foo are exactly the same way of working, and it's a lot shorter and it's easier to type, and it's similar to the way Lodash uses an underscore. jQuery uses the $sign. Okay, so there's some examples of how to grab hold of various things within the DOM, and then what you want to do with it is you want to manipulate the DOM. Right, so you can get the text, you can change the text, you can change the HTML, you can set attributes, you can get attributes, you can add a class identifier to a particular thing, you can remove classes, you can add CSS if you want to. Right, so you can change the look programmatically, rather than relying it specifically just being on in the CSS. Now, the nice thing is jQuery is very concise, right? It's a very short way of changing things. And it's nice because all elements selected are there, so you don't need to loop to apply changes to multiple elements. You just do the addition, and it'll be applied to, that addition will be applied to all parts that have been selected by that selector. Not only can you change attributes and IDs and text within fields, within tags of the DOM, you can also rearrange the DOM. So you can delete stuff, you can append stuff, you can prepend stuff, right? So you can add things on the fly programmatically. Just be very careful with doing some of this stuff. In particular, try and keep your HTML file having HTML, your JavaScript file having JavaScript, and your CSS file having CSS. It's okay to have a little bit of HTML inside your JavaScript if you need to add or change the DOM, but don't have huge tracts of HTML or CSS inside your JavaScript file. Try and push those out to the appropriate HTML for HTML or CSS file for CSS. Nice thing is that jQuery also allows you to very easily deal with events, right? So we can put a click event here and log something to the console and get the element that was clicked. And we've got mouse down, key press, mouse up, etc. Right? And then if there's a convenience method that jQuery doesn't give you, then you can pull out whatever you want using the on method. Right, so here's how we might write a function that happens when the ready event happens, and that is so common a thing to want to do that there is a shortcut, right? So we don't even have to bother with identifying the ready method. Now, there's lots more that jQuery can do. You can check to see if things are in an array. It can find an item. It can do some nice funky fading or sliding or toggling, which is pretty good. I suggest you read the documentation, think about what design you want to have, and then have a look through the documentation. There is a nice jQuery tutorial available. I suggest you have a look at that. And that is a quick run through Chapter 13 on